All right. Well, today it's time for another live video. So today I want to talk about Harvard University, and certifications. So if you are in internal audit, if you're trying to get ahead in your career, then this video is especially for you. If you're not, you still might want to listen anyway because I'm going to shed some light on kind of some common career lies that are kind of perpetrated out there in the internet about what it actually takes to get ahead in your career. Okay, so so let's get started. Um, there are several groups that are out there that have spent years and millions of dollars convincing you that there are only certain certifications that you can get that will get you ahead in your internal audit career. And they're lies. Okay. And for most people, they're actually not relevant for your job. Okay. So I'm going to share an analogy here uh, to try to help you understand and explain this concept to you. And why am I doing this? Hey, Robert, glad that you're here with me. You get to hear me rant rant a little bit again today. So let's talk about why I'm talking about this. So for a long time, I've helped people get the Certified Internal Auditor certification (CIA), and in fact, I have a couple thousand people in a discussion group that are all interested and want to get the CIA. And so typically when people come into the group, I welcome them. I send them a message and I say, "Where are you in your CIA journey?" Okay, where are you in your journey? And a lot of people don't really understand that, or they're like, "Well, I'm taking part one, or I'm just starting, or I'm thinking about doing it because it's something that I want to do." Okay, in fact, probably. Hi, Lazan. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So if you're here, go ahead and type in Umar. You're here too. I'll try to do some shout outs to people that tell me that you're here as well. And if you have questions or comments as we're going through this, I'll try to incorporate it into the live as well. Okay. So anyway, I have a lot of people who are just starting or think they want to do it. Now, why do they think that this is what they have to do? Because that's what they have been told. Okay. And so the IIA has spent years and millions of dollars in marketing telling you that unless you have the CIA, you're not a real internal auditor, which is bullshit. Okay. I know a lot of really good auditors that don't have their CIA. Now, the journey part, this is again where a lot of people don't realize it takes most people 2 to 5 years to get that certification. Okay. And so that's going to be important because I'm going to talk about and share this analogy with you. Okay, here very shortly. So, a lot of people, especially in the internal audit space, and I talk about them as the big three, the big three certifications that a lot of people. Robert, what is a real internal auditor? Ooh, that's can be the topic for a whole other live that we get onto as well. So anyway, yeah, that's a good question too, right? So anyway, here here we go. The big three, right? So most people will think that look, I've got to be a CPA, I've got to be a CIA, or I've got to be a CISA for my SACA. Okay, and those are all great certifications to get. But the reality is they are not for most people. They are aspirational and they are outside of the reach, unfortunately, of most people. So let me explain why. Well, if you might say, look, I want to be a CPA. I'm a CPA. Okay, I have a CPA license in Idaho and California. But the reality is, unless you have a master's degree in accountancy, you can't get the CPA. So if you wanted to get the CPA, you'd have to go back to school, quit your job, spend a lot of money getting that master's degree before you could even sit for the CPA. Okay. CISA, another great certification, but not in the reach for most people. Why? unless you have 5 years of IT experience, you can't get the CISA. Okay, so unless you have 5 years of IT experience, that one's not really an option for you either, unless you want to, uh, spend 5 years of your career doing that in order to get it. For the CIA, again, most people, it's out of their reach. Why? Right? Because you have to have 2 years of experience before you can be certified. You have to spend 2 to 5 years of your life studying after hours, spend thousands of hours usually studying away from your family, away from your job in order to get it, because it's a very tricky exam for you to pass. There's 3 parts. And anyway, so the reality is, for a lot of people, those three are not really in your reach. Okay. And why am I talking about this? Because I get people who have been trying to do some of these things for years. They've spent thousands of dollars and thousands of hours of their time, and then they give up. Okay. And so they've wasted a bunch of time, they've wasted a bunch of money for something that was aspirational to begin with. And if they actually ask some of the hard questions instead of just believing the marketing bullshit that's out there, they would have never gone down that path, and they never would have wasted all that time and money. Okay. So here's the analogy. Okay. I want to talk about Harvard. Harvard is a great institution. In fact, I went to Harvard. Okay. I've also gone to Princeton and Dartmouth and Stanford, and those are great campuses, but I didn't get a degree from any of them, right? I did get an award from Yale, and I do have my master's from University of Southern California, a big, prestigious organization when it comes to business degrees. Okay. But I want to talk about Harvard, because Harvard, at least in the US and I think around the world, is seen as kind of one of the premier universities. And so a lot of people think, well, if I can get into Harvard, then my career is set. Okay. And so let's say that my parents told me ever since I was a little boy, Jason, in order to be successful in your career, you need to go to Harvard. You got to go to Harvard. You got to get a Harvard degree. And then you go to work for a big company. They're going to take care of you, and then you're going to retire. Okay. So I've grown up as this little child listening to what my parents are telling me. Jason, the only way to be successful is to go to Harvard. Now, just like those certifications I was telling you about before, Harvard is out of the reach of most people, okay, for a couple of reasons. One is, to go there to do your undergrad, you're probably going to spend about $400,000 by the time you pay tuition, books, lodging, everything else. Most of the people that I know who went to an Ivy League school like that, they come out about $400,000 in debt. So first off, for most people, it's really expensive, okay, to do. The second thing is the acceptance rate is less than 5%, which means 95% of the applications that Harvard gets every single year get thrown in the trash. Those people never get into Harvard. Okay. So, in fact, unless your family went to Harvard, unless you are rich and famous, unless you are a minority who scored perfectly on your college entrance exams, you're probably not going to go to Harvard. Okay. That's just a reality. But again, let's say that my parents had told me, Jason, you got to go to Harvard. So I put in my application the first year, I get denied. Damn, right? Okay. Well, I'm going to put in my application for next year, right? Because I really have to go to Harvard. So I put in my application next year and I get denied. And I wait another year and I put in my application to go to Harvard and I get denied again. Okay. Now, if we just use some simple math, okay, on average, I would have to put in an application for 20 years before I would ever get into Harvard, right? Just law of averages, right? Less than 5%, do it 20 times, maybe I'll get in, right? So let me ask you, would it make sense for me to put my career on hold for 5 years, 10 years, 20 years while I'm trying to get a degree from Harvard? Does that make a lot of sense? Think about all the money that I would be missing in my career by choosing to hang on to that lie that my parents were telling me that I had to go to Harvard. Wouldn't it be better if instead I found another option that was maybe quicker and cheaper and maybe even more practical to be able to go through than to wait to go to Harvard? I think that would make a lot of sense, right? In fact, if I was to sit here and think about it and say, you know what, my parents told me that to be successful, I have to go to Harvard. Well, are there successful people out there who didn't go to Harvard? If I asked myself that question, I would say, well, of course there are. There's lots of universities out there besides Harvard. So if I don't get into Harvard, or I don't want to put my career on hold for that long, maybe I could go to another university, right? In fact, there's lots of universities out there. I went to Boise State University for my undergrad. Great organization, right? Good at what they did. In fact, I worked with a lot of people from Harvard and Yale and some of these bigger name schools. And guess what? They weren't any smarter than me. My Boise State education was just as good as their Harvard education for the work that I was doing. So instead, I paid $20,000, this was a long time ago, to go to school instead of $400,000. And we had the same job. Okay. We were getting paid the same amount of money, but I only invested $20,000. They invested $400,000. So who's going to have the quicker payback in career? Me, right? So that's part of it too for you to be thinking about is what's my return actually going to be as well, right? Now, I bring this up and a lot of you might say, well, Jason, that Harvard thing, that doesn't make any sense. Well, it makes a lot of sense if you're actually listening, okay? Because what I find is there are a lot of people who put their career on hold. For example, they want to get a job in internal audit, but no one will hire them until they get a certification. Well, if they're looking at CIA, they're not going to get the job because they can't get CIA until they have experience. So how do you get experience without having the certification? How do you get the job without having the certification? And so they end up putting their career on hold even while they're waiting to try to take all of those exams. And like I said, for most people, it's 2 to 5 years. Okay. Now, a lot of people, again, might say, well, but it's cheaper, right? It's cheaper, even if I spend a lot more time. It's not cheaper than a lot of these other certification options. Okay. In fact, if you're interested in other certification options, I put it in the description or whatever I think that's above this video or wherever you're looking at it. Okay. Where there are some certificates and certifications that literally you can get for $300 or you could get for $2,000 or $3,000. And again, a lot of people might say, well, $2,000 or $3,000, that's a lot of money. Okay, again, let's do some math. Okay, for something like the CIA, first off, you have to pay $250 to apply. To apply to take the exam. Then you have to pay for at least 3 exams that are, again, about $250 a piece. So just for the privilege of taking the exams, you're going to pay $1,000. The reality is less than 40% of people pass the exam, which means you're going to have to pay to retake the exams at $250 a pop. So for the average person, and again, these are averages. For part 1, most people have to take that 2 to 3 times. For part 2, they have to take it 1 to 2 times. For part 3, it's 4 to 5 times, which means, again, if you are just average, which most of us are average, I consider myself average in a lot of ways, That means you're going to have to take those exams many, many times, which means you're going to spend another $1,000 or $2,000. So all of a sudden you're to $2,000 or $3,000 just to take the exams. Then you're going to have to buy some kind of study material. That again can cost you anywhere from $500 to $1,000. Then when you start thinking about the time that you're spending, and literally for a lot of these people, it's hundreds, if not thousands of hours of your time that you're spending. All of a sudden, you can very quickly be spending $5,000 to $10,000 for this certificate. Okay, that doesn't make a lot of sense. What if instead you could actually get a certificate or a certification, like I said, in a few days or a few weeks or a couple of months, and be able to study on your own time when you need to? That's not a tricky exam. It's an exam that you will pass, right? Because it's practical as well. Now, why am I going off on this? Because there are other options, right? And a lot of people are in this space in internal audit and with their career and certifications, believing, like I would as a little kid, that Harvard is the only option. That is the only university to go to. But there are other options, right? And so, since there are other options, shouldn't you consider other options? I think you should. There are a lot of other options now. And again, cRisk Academy offers some of them, but there's other ones that are out there too. So even if you don't want to do something through cRisk Academy, find something else. But don't put your career on hold, just like I wouldn't want to put my career on hold by waiting 20 years to get into Harvard. Think about how much money I would make in 20 years, even if I was working at Starbucks, instead of trying to put my career on hold. Okay. So anyway, I know some people on watching and listening. If you got comments or you got questions, put them in, because I've got a few more minutes that I could hang around as well. But like I said, I just want people to realize that there are other options for your career. And I see so many people that really get caught in that chicken and egg syndrome, where they want to get a job or they want to get a promotion, but it's going to take them so long uh, studying after hours to try to get through, again, these big three, that they're great. They're great. They're just not for most people. And they might not be right for you either, right? So I just want you to start thinking about it and start planning, because the reality is, for most people, when you get your next job or you get your next promotion, it's like $10,000 to $30,000 a year. That's a lot of money, right? Are you willing to invest some time and money, even if it's $2,000 or $3,000, to be able to help you get a much better paying job? I've had some other videos on here before about like the $2 million career mistake. And again, you're literally, over the course of your career, talking about millions of dollars of difference in compensation, even if you wait just a few years by trying to do some of these other certification options. The reality is the certifications help you get through to get an interview. Okay. And so, the same thing, right? If I were looking at, and I was trying to get a job, and it said minimum qualifications having a university degree. Well, if I went to even something like University of Phoenix, right? A lot of people might say, laugh at University of Phoenix, if that's not a real organization or a real university, because it's online. It's online and it doesn't have the prestige of Harvard. Well, guess what, folks? University of Phoenix is the highest enrollment university in the United States. Why? Because it's online. People can do it after hours. It costs like $10,000 a year. And so a lot of people choose to do that, because at the end of the day, when people are looking at your LinkedIn resume or your LinkedIn profile, or they're looking at your resume, The HR person is just checking to make sure you have a university degree. They don't care whether it comes from University of Phoenix. They don't care whether it comes from Boise State University. They don't care whether it comes from, you know, Harvard. They're just looking to make sure that you have a university degree. So if you're looking again in internal audit jobs, a lot of the people in HR are just looking to see if you have a certification. They don't care who it's from. They don't know who it's from. And like I said, so having something on your resume that you can get quicker will help you get the interview more than not having anything, right? And so again, imagine if I just started sending out my resumes and I was waiting to get into Harvard, and it's like, well, but I'm on the wait list for Harvard, so hire me now, and I'll get my degree eventually. So just hire me now. Nobody's going to do that, right? So it's the same thing. I see a lot of people that are like CIA in progress. Well, that's like saying I'm on the Harvard wait list, or I haven't graduated yet, but I'm still there, right? So do yourself a favor, like I said, is start asking yourself some of these questions. Are you believing some of those lies that are out there? Are you believing that you have to get your CPA, you have to get your CIA, you have to get your CISA in order to be successful in your career? Because the truth is, and like what Robert said before, I use the term real internal auditor, and he even said, "What is a real internal auditor?" in the comments, right? Because most people in the profession do not have one of those three certificates. I will tell you that right now. And if you don't believe me, go stalk people on LinkedIn or whatever else. But I used to run internal audit departments as a chief audit executive, and not everyone on my staff had one of those certifications. Okay. Now, many of them were working towards it, and this was years ago before there were other options, right? And again, if we were in the 1850s, right? Let's say we were in 1850. Well, Harvard might have been one of the few options at that point, but we're not. We're in 2023, right? So there are a lot of other options that are out there. So anyway, just trying to make everybody aware of that, and talking until I'm blue in the face about some of this stuff, because hopefully the analogy helps set it a little bit more. So again, I'm not seeing any other comments coming through, so I'm probably going to cut off here unless people have comments really quick. But thanks for listening, and have a great rest of your day.